Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'll be reviewing for you Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, both for the Nintendo Switch. Since I have already re-reviewed Super Mario Galaxy 2 with footage, and I also have a footage review of the 3D All-Stars version of Super Mario Galaxy, this review is more so going to be talking about the changes made to these Switch re-releases, as well as re-clarifying a few changes made in 3D All-Stars that I forgot to mention in my original review, and just how it feels to return to these games after experiencing stuff like Super Mario Odyssey and Bowser's Fury. There's now an assist mode if you're having too much trouble, where you get extra hit points. If you fall off the ledge, then you'll get teleported back onto it. And I believe you also have health regeneration if you stand still long enough. The game now supports amiibos, although they don't get you anything special. If you scan a Mario series amiibo, then you get extra coins. If you scan a non-Mario series amiibo, then you get some star bits. If you scan in either the brand new Mario amiibo or the brand new Rosalina amiibo, you'll get a life mushroom or a 1-up mushroom. Both of those cost $40 a piece, and you can barely give them a worthwhile reward. What a real saving grace you are, Nintendo. Speaking of which, in Super Mario Galaxy 2, there was a toad called the Bank Toad that would allow you to deposit star bits into an account. You'd even get interest after a while, and you could share star bits between save files. That character is still there, but he's no longer the Bank Toad. All he does now is he tells you to use amiibo. And even if you do use an amiibo, he'll still tell you to use an amiibo anyway. So, yay for Nintendo taking away a beloved feature and discouraging sharing, and instead saying, hey, spend money on a piece of plastic that's gonna get you money in-game. So spending money to get money. Lovely. Some of the UI and the textures have been redone, although it's not really that noticeable. Unless you have a side-by-side comparison, you probably wouldn't pick up on it. Heck, even when I did see a side-by-side comparison, I barely picked up on it. However, there is a bit of a catch to that if you're playing this on Switch 2. You actually get a free update that boosts the resolution to 1080p in handheld and 4K on a 4K TV. So what that essentially means in layman's terms is that you can see significantly more detailed environments, you can see stuff from farther away, and on the big screen TV it's twice as powerful as it was on the Switch 1, and in handheld mode it's as powerful as it was on the TV, on the regular Switch. This does come with an unfortunate drawback, and that's that there were certain star bits that you weren't meant to be able to see that far away on the original Wii, and when you try to collect them with the pointer, it just doesn't register. Either that or this game was just glitchy and rushed out and Nintendo didn't bother polishing that aspect, because that never happened on the Wii. If I pointed my cursor at a star bit, it would darn pick it up no matter how far away it was. That being said, even on original hardware, both Galaxy games look phenomenal, so I'm glad that we have an opportunity to view them probably as originally was intended, had the developers not been held back by the limited horsepower of the Wii. Now, since the Switch is a hybrid console, you can choose to play it in either handheld mode or on the TV. And when you're in handheld mode, you can either drag your finger across the touch screen to pick up star bits, tap it to fire them, and even use the gyro control to aim the cursor, which I didn't realize until I was on the credits sequence, because it's interactive. And I think, you know what? I wish I would have known that when I was playing 3D All-Stars, because that would have been far less cumbersome than constantly having to drag your finger. Heck, I'm pretty sure the Yoshi sequences would be completely unplayable were it not for this method. In the TV mode, though, there are some problems with the gyro. You see, on the Wii remote relied on infrared technology, so that it would detect where the sensor bar was in proximity to the Wii. So, in layman's terms, what that means is that the cursor would always be centered around how you were positioning your hand next to where the sensor bar was. So if you wanted the cursor to be in the center of the screen, then you'd point it toward the center of the sensor bar. Pretty simple. but the Joy-Cons rely exclusively on gyro aiming, which means that it can tell which direction the controller is pointing, but not where it's pointing in 3D space. Now, this was a problem in Super Mario 3D All-Stars as well, where you'd constantly have to press the R button to recenter the cursor, because again, lack of a sensor bar, so it didn't know where the cursor was supposed to be. Now, 5 years later, and especially since I'm playing this on the Switch 2, have they improved the functionality of the Joy-Cons?
Not even a little bit.
Yep, it's pretty much exactly the same as 3D All-Stars, for better or for worse. To be fair, the motion controls do work really well in just about anything else, because there are some specialized galaxies that use motion controls in really creative ways, and they worked perfectly fine. About as good as they worked on the Wii, more or less. Now, there is a bit of a catch if you're playing this on Switch 2, but there's a but to it. So let's get into the positives. The Switch 2 update does allow you to use mouse mode, but only as player 2, if you're in the multiplayer mode. I guess Nintendo figured that if you were to use mouse mode as player 1, then you might have trouble doing jumps and collecting star bits at the same time. I think fans would have liked the option. Nintendo games have historically had terrible options menus. This game is no exception. All it really offers you is the ability to invert the camera controls, and that's about it. And I personally think there could have easily been a workaround, or players would have liked the option to be able to use the mouse mode for a little bit and then lift it up and go back to regular controls, you know, like games like Hogwarts Legacy and Metroid Prime 4 were using. Was that really so hard to implement? I think it probably would have worked better than the pointer controls, because at least with a mouse, the floor is a makeshift sensor bar. So it probably wouldn't have needed to be resynced so much. Of course, it depends on the surface, and maybe Nintendo wanted to be fair to all players, but it just feels like a real missed opportunity when a lot of players probably would have suggested just using the right stick for collecting the star bits, but that's what controls the camera, so I guess nothing could be done about that. Something that was added to 3D All-Stars that I forgot to mention in my original review is that in the original version you'd have to shake either the Wii Remote or the nunchuck to make Mario do a spin or activate his power-up. But on the Switch, you can still shake one of the Joy-Cons, or you can simply press the Y button, which allows for less awkward moments where the cursor is going all over the screen, and it helps protect my wrists. So people with disabilities should be very happy with this feature. The game now auto-saves without player input, so you no longer have a prompt asking you to save, and even when the game is saving, it no longer takes up the entire screen telling you not to turn off the system. It just has a little icon on the bottom left, and you can even still run around while the game is saving, which is especially helpful in Super Mario Galaxy 2, because that game it takes far less time to get into the action. Another returning feature from 3D All-Stars is that you get the full soundtracks to both games. In the case of Galaxy 1, the songs are still mislabeled based on how they were called in the Japanese soundtrack, but it's inconsistent. You get something like the Good Egg Galaxy, where it's still, all these years later, still called Egg Planet, but yet the Gusty Garden Galaxy is called the Gusty Garden Galaxy. So is it really that hard for them to try to localize them in English? Super Mario Galaxy 2 doesn't have that problem. Its names are now consistent with what they're called in Nintendo Music, so I don't know what the heck is going on with these guys. Either that or Nintendo Treehouse is just too afraid to go against the original Japanese almost to a fault, or at the very least not be consistent about it. But, as someone who absolutely adores it whenever there's an in-game soundtrack player in a game, I am super thankful that these soundtracks are being preserved, especially because there's a physical version of these games. Especially in the case of Mario Galaxy 2, because that has never had an in-game soundtrack player, and in many cases I think it has the superior soundtrack. And it also contains the new music tracks that were added, which, speaking of which, let's talk about the context of this new music. In Galaxy 1, there are new pages that have been added to Rosalina's storybook that you unlock after you collect one more star after beating the game. It's a bit anticlimactic in my opinion, but the storybook was also written with very little kids in mind, so I can kind of excuse it, but it also feels like it's a lot of words that aren't really saying anything at all, but it does have some nice new artwork, and the music is soothing, but not particularly to my tastes. I mean, the Galaxy games were some of the first Nintendo games that relied on an orchestra for most of its soundtrack, and I would have personally liked more orchestra pieces, but that's unfortunate. In the case of Galaxy 2, though, this is the first time ever that that game has had a storybook. You unlock it after getting through a bit of World 3, and gradually more and more you unlock more pages. You unlock the finale after you get one more star after getting the credits. And I don't really want to say anything here because that would be a bit of a spoiler, but it does recontextualize a few of the events of the main game, as well as somewhat gives a little bit of a clue as to what was going on in the first Galaxy, and it seems pretty natural. I do think a lot of fans will be very grateful that some missing context from the original Japanese version has now been canonized? Canonized is the word for a saint. Whatever the word is, information that was missing from the original English release is now said, like, this is what was there all along. And it also has some neat artwork and some neat concepts that I hope will be revisited in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. But what's really significant about this is that this represents a bit of a paradigm shift within Nintendo. Because if you know your history about Super Mario Galaxy 2, Shigeru Miyamoto was absolutely adamant that Galaxy 2 not contain too much story. He just wanted to get straight to the point and get to the fun factor and not have to worry about a complex world or any backstories. And 15 years later, the main story hasn't really changed all that much at all. But at least now that the storybook is there, there's at least a little bit more backstory, and the few, quote, story sequences that there are now have a completely different meaning to them. So the ending in Super Mario Galaxy 2 actually has a meaning now, which is nice, because I never thought it would see the day. Those are all of the major changes that I can think of, so now let's talk about how I feel about returning to these games back to back in a post-Odyssey and post-Bowser's Fury world. Personally, I still really love both Galaxy games. They have some of the most clever level design in any video game I've ever played. The anti-gravity, for the most part, works great. The galaxies that use special controls are a lot of fun and super great to replay. And some galaxies are so creative and so phenomenal that I was inwardly cheering when I got a chance to revisit them. As far as which Galaxy game I prefer, I was a bit undecided in my original 3D All-Stars review, but I've since learned that I believe I would say that Galaxy 2 is the one I prefer, because if we were to count all of the galaxies that I love and all of the galaxies that I groan whenever I have to revisit, in the case of Super Mario Galaxy 2, there was only one galaxy where I said, oh no, not that one again, whereas there were quite a few that I did that for in Galaxy 1. So I think Galaxy 2 overall has the better gameplay. I wasn't disoriented as much. There were still times where Mario would run in circles randomly, which never happened on the Wii, so I think that was a glitch. And occasionally the game crashed, and occasionally they'd have long loading screens, but thankfully they'd usually be fixed upon a simple restart. But getting back to which games that I like better, I will admit that Galaxy 1 gets points for, well, establishing the concept, and it has way better atmosphere and story. I also think the Comet Observatory is a better hub world, but at the same time, it's also a bit cumbersome that they didn't add in a fast travel system, which, don't get me wrong, the Comet Observatory is a very small place, so it's not that hard to walk to and from. But you compare that to Galaxy 2, where its hub world is just a planet shaped like Mario's face, which is pretty boring. But once you step on the panel next to the steering wheel, you get a world map, which aesthetically is pretty bland, but it's so much more convenient to travel to and from the galaxies that I wish something of the sort had been implemented into Galaxy 1. I also think that the comet medals make Galaxy 2 feel a lot less chaotic. Like in the original, the prankster comets would just appear out of nowhere. But now the comet medals help you be able to take the prankster comets at your own pace or ignore them altogether, which I think is brilliant. There's also far less fluff. Like in Super Mario Galaxy 1, there would be some galaxies that would have 3 or more stars, and a lot of it would feel like they're really trying to pad out the galaxy, whereas in Galaxy 2, there's typically only 2 main objectives, sometimes only 1, and there would be maybe 1 hidden star, and some wouldn't even show up until you got a letter from an NPC telling you to come back. So you felt like the galaxies served their point, and then you moved on to the next one, and as a result, there were more high-quality galaxies that I was really excited to visit. Plus, I also think Galaxy 2 has the better final level, and that's always great. Both games do have phenomenal soundtracks, really great controls. I do think that I prefer how Mario controls in Mario Odyssey, though, as the controls haven't been changed in the slightest as far as Mario's movement. So you still have the very floaty and very kind of stiff way that Mario moves, and all of the glitches are still there. So all those invisible walls in Galaxy 1 and those weird jumps that the game just would not let you make, still there. So if you're hoping that Nintendo would fix aspects of these games, you're going to be disappointed. Personally, I feel like that was the right call in this case because there are so many people that love these games exactly as they are, and probably all they really wanted was just a simple HD upscaling. And for the most part, you're gonna get that. But here's one change that, for me in particular, made it all worth it, where I said, oh heck yeah, I'm so glad they didn't change that. And that's that they kept all of the original cast members, didn't re-record any of the lines, didn't ask the new actors to record anything. So that means we get the return of the man, the myth, and the legend. I don't care if people are annoyed by me overusing this clip. We're gonna do it, because this man needs justice.
Hello, I'm Mario. Let's make a pizza pie together. You go get some sausage, I'm gonna get some spaghetti. We put spaghetti and sausage in the pizza. And then I chase with the pizza. And if I catch with the pizza, you gotta eat the pizza. Then you make a pizza. Then we're gonna make a lasagna. I'm gonna chase you down the mountain with a lasagna pan. I catch the lasagna, you gotta eat the lasagna. Then you're gonna make a lasagna. And then we're gonna make a rasta tutto l'otello. It's a great pasta. I'm gonna make a rasta tutto l'otello, chase you with the rasta tutto l'otello. And then you gotta eat the rasta tutto l'otello. And then you gotta make a...
One thing to keep in mind about these games is that they are considered separate releases even if you get the physical version bundle. So if you put the card into your Switch, you're just going to get 2 icons on your menu, one for Galaxy 1 and one for Galaxy 2, and there is no crossover within these games. So if you wanted the Comet medals to be added into the galaxies of Galaxy 1, you're out of luck. If there were things that you liked in Galaxy 1 that you wanted to be added into Galaxy 2, besides the storybook, you're also out of luck. Well, technically the storybook is completely different in Galaxy 2 than Galaxy 1, but at least the concept was brought over. That's why I'm really glad that Nintendo gives you the option to purchase these separately on the eShop. But here's where we get into a bit of controversy, and that's that these games are expensive on the Switch. If you're getting them separately, you have to pay $40 each, which, to put that into perspective, both Galaxy games on the Wii U Virtual Console were only $20 each. So you could get 2 for the price of 1. Personally, I feel like the price on the Wii U was completely manageable, and if you can get something like a gift card or a sale to get the games down at that price, heck yeah. I do think that I personally would recommend Galaxy 2 over Galaxy 1, and if you already have Galaxy on 3D All-Stars, then I would say there's really no need to double dip. Someone will probably post the new storybook pages on YouTube, so you might as well just look it up there instead of spending all that money just to get 1 extra chapter. If you want to get the physical version, that is $70. No way! For games that are more or less just Wii games that are slightly upscaled and have a handful of extra features, a lot of them can be easily ignored. I personally rented this from Gamefly, and I feel like that was the right call because I 100%ed Galaxy 2 on the Wii, and with these gyro controls, no way am I going to do that again, especially because my friends and family helped me out a lot with the 100% process, and now I don't have that luxury anymore. Galaxy 1 I already have on the Switch 1 with 3D All-Stars, so why bother having it again? I felt like once I recompleted Galaxy 2 for this review, maybe I'll just re-rent it if I need to. So I would say just do what I did and rent the game, if not from Gamefly, then from the library, or wait for it to go on a very steep sale. Maybe like if you paid $40 for the bundle, I would say that that's more worth it because that's how much you would pay for both games on the Wii U. And during the Wii U era, when Nintendo was offering old games, they were generally way more fair than they are now. You are in for some absolutely amazing games, but do not expect them to pull any new features from recent Mario games. Do not expect them to be changed pretty much at all. If you hated them back then, you'll hate them now. But if you've never played these games, this is a pretty good way to do it. In the case of Galaxy 2, I would say that this is more or less the definitive version of the game, except for those pointer controls. If you can get it on the Wii, I'd probably say that's the better option if you don't care about the new storybook. But otherwise, it's a pretty good way to play it, just not at that price. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends. I hope that you will let me know what you think of the video, and if you have experiences with the Galaxy games that you'd like to share. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!